Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first inaugural episode of The Ship's Log. This is the official podcast of the Coast Guard Auxiliary. My name is JB Yowell, and I'm the National Branch Chief Officer of Audio and Video. And with me is my co-host, Mr. Jerry Maddox, who's the National Branch Assistant of Audio and Video.
Hello, everyone.
Yes, sir. We are excited as this, again, is our first episode, and we don't know what to expect. You don't know what to expect, but we're going to have a lot of fun. So the idea behind these podcasts is simply to educate individuals on what's going on in the Coast Guard Auxiliary, even on the Gold side, the Coast Guard side. We certainly want folks to feel more connected to the auxiliary and feel as if they can have a resource to know not only what's going on, but to feel as if the mission is we are connected and feel more closer to the active Coast Guard. I know, Jerry, you said it best. And just to let people know, I've only been in the auxiliary right at a year. You've been in it several years, longer than me. And what would you say, people really want that experience to feel and look like?
Well, I mean, for in both directions. I mean, the Gold side wants from us and we want from ourselves is that to realize that we are not just some auxiliary organization that fundraises or does the jobs that nobody else wants to do. We are an active, integrated part of the United States Coast Guard. There is no differentiation in the Coast Guard. And we supplement their forces in very valuable ways. And part of what we want to bring out here is what is available to each auxiliarist to fulfill those duties. Maybe you wanted to be in the military when you were younger and never had the chance. Maybe you medicaled out. Maybe there were unforeseen circumstances. And as you'll see through some of the people we're going to explore their lives, people who retired from the military, they find in the auxiliary that return to home. I know I was a dependent of the military growing up. I grew up on military bases. I never really feel at home without one. So the auxiliary provides for me that connection to my own roots, as well as providing me an outlet to serve the country and to do things that you would not get to do in everyday life. So we're very excited about this and really feeling the vibe here. So I'm hoping everybody else catches on to it as well and starts to find their way in this.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited about, being able to deliver my skill set to the auxiliary, which, I've been involved in radio and media for the last several years. I've had a marketing company. That's my real job, my daytime job. So offering these skills to the Coast Guard Auxiliary is extremely exciting and fun. And yes, I'm silly. I'm very unorthodox. So hopefully we can make you smile a little bit and you can scratch your head and wonder, what's this knucklehead doing? What's he talking about? But at the end of the day, I hope it all makes sense to you. So we're here doing that. And the first segment, what we're wanting to do is call it Piping All Hands. And Jerry just freshly told me what that term means. I guess it's an old ship term or boating term.
Well, if you think back to the old ships, you didn't have radios. You didn't have all the, little VHF communicators that we have now. You didn't have intercoms. So what did they have? They had a pipe that ran down, and they would literally yell down the pipe. So that would be piping the hands, all hands on deck, whatever we needed to go for. So now, same thing still applies. We carry forth that tradition. If you're on base, you're on the ship, when the intercom goes off, you're piping them. So that's what we're doing. We're piping all hands. We're going to give the information in this section. The things you really need to know, the things that can help.
Well, now I know what it meant when Grandma used to say, "Pipe down, young man."
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
So here it is. I get that a lot. So, on a very serious note, we understand that COVID-19 has really changed the landscape on how the auxiliary interacts with one another. And I know just being in it again for a year, I was really enjoying meeting folks at my local flotilla, which, by the way, is in I'm 5-5 District 8 CR. So that's in Fort Worth, Texas, Eagle Mountain Lake. Get a little shout out to my flotilla out there. Where's yours at, Jerry?
We're coming to you from the great state of Alabama. We are Flotilla 36 on the eastern shore of Mobile Bay, Baldwin County, Alabama. We are also in the 8th Coastal Region. We are located firmly within Sector Mobile, and we do a lot of active work with Sector Mobile and the Aviation Training Center here in Mobile, and we'll probably bring some of that forward as we go forward. Of course, we want to span out to everybody else's units in the country and all the things that they're into, but of course, everything starts at home. So
Sure. Talking about that, I mean, I'm assuming in your unit, because you're closer to an active, Coast Guard base and station there, you're able to get a little more action with the Gold Side, whereas in North Texas and Fort Worth, we don't really have any active Coast Guard around other than maybe recruiters in Dallas. So what kinds of activities do you get into pre-COVID? And then we'll talk about kind of what things are looking like with COVID.
Well, I'm fortunate. I get to stand an active duty watch at the Aviation Training Center. I stand the ODO watch, which is the Operations Duty Officer. Basically launching aircraft, recovering aircraft, doing any in-flight communications that they need to be able to carry out their training missions, to be able to carry out their active missions. We do all the radio relay for search and rescue, just basically anything and everything that needs to be communicated on the operations side. Also, we have people who stand radio watch at Sector, which would be monitoring the Marine VHF for distress calls, for pom-poms, for security, making those calls themselves, making Marine advisories. We have people who stand guard at the guard shack. That really helps them a lot because it frees up the non-rates to be able to go back and actually get the training that they're there to get. So, for us, there's a lot going on, a lot of opportunities. And we have a couple of other freestanding radio stations that are auxiliary run. And we do a lot of on-water activities as well, support activities, side-along training with the Gulf Strike Team, letting them practice towing, us practice towing, pulling men out of the water, man overboard drills, really a lot of interaction with the Gold Side.
That's phenomenal. Sounds like a well-rounded flotilla for sure.
It is that.
With COVID, I mean, I know we're very restricted on our interactions with one another. We're not doing our monthly meetings right now in person. We're all doing them virtually, and we're logging our minutes and doing things virtually. I mean, with you being a bit more active flotilla closer to the Gold Side, do you have to stand down right now? Or are you able to get any more action? What's that looking like?
Our sector, because Mobile, Alabama in general, had higher numbers. Our sector is still in stand down, except for certain orders. Vessel examinations have to be under special orders. Any missions have to be under special orders. We're, as far as our regular watch standing, everything's become restricted to active duty only. Even the reservists are not doing their actual in-person time. And actually, some of the sector offices are being run remotely as well. So even some of the active duty are in work at home. So it's kind of put a little bit of a kibosh on what we've been able to do and what we haven't been able to do. We're really looking forward for this thing to be over because, a lot of people, that's their only social interaction. Some of our flotilla members, that is their family. We are a very, very tight-knit group. And I think in this, too, it's very important to kind of keep that in mind when you're looking around. I know 8th Coastal stood up a call tree system, where flotillas were making calls at least once a week to check on everybody within the flotilla, kind of reach out, make sure everybody knew they were cared about. But that's something that I think maybe we all need to focus on nationally, is making sure we're staying in communication, because we don't know that there are some of our older members or even some of our younger members that are the only interaction they really have is with the flotilla. That is their social life. And that can be very depressing for people when that goes away, especially, a person who, say, is involved in standing a radio watch at sector and they're used to going there and now they're stuck at their house. It takes a lot of excitement out of a life pretty quickly.
Right. And I know we were going to talk a little bit about chaplains and how individuals can use a chaplain as a resource. I guess if you're depressed or you're just not feeling like you want to be part of the world, and perhaps you can reach out to a chaplain and they can lift your spirits a little bit.
Well, I mean, think about it. Your chaplain, well, he understands the world you live in. He understands the world you're operating in. He's not just your average civilian, pastor. And don't get me wrong, though there are many of them that are extremely capable. But when it comes to military interaction, this is not important only for the auxiliary. It's important that the auxiliary understands that the chaplains are there for them. But for the gold side as well, the chaplain is an excellent resource. He has access to your R&R. He has access to everything that you need, every resource that you need. Your chaplain can secure, and he can do it in a confidential manner. He is somebody that you can talk to, or she. I say he, but there are many really qualified, wonderful female chaplains as well. There's somebody you can go to in a time of need, and they can guide you in the right direction. And they can get for you those things that are in need that may not even necessarily be spiritual per se. They could be just something to lift your spirits, a phone call home or access to something, whatever you need, they are there. And it's important to realize too, that within the auxiliary, you have the opportunity to serve as a chaplain. You can serve as an active duty chaplain for the Coast Guard within the auxiliary. It is one of those things where we touch the gold side really heavily. And as a matter of fact, the Coast Guard relies heavily on the auxiliary, and they're in desperate need of chaplains. So if you know somebody who is a good listener, somebody who would be a good fit, a pastor or a priest or a rabbi, any leader of a faith community, they would be a good way to recruit, because we're in desperate need of chaplains. And as a matter of fact, in the auxiliary, the only chaplains that are full-time for the Coast Guard are the auxiliary, because the active duty side pulls from the Navy chaplaincy. So the Navy chaplains come over and serve within the Coast Guard unit. But as far as being purely Coast Guard, the auxiliary would be the way to go. And again, if you know anyone who would be interested, and I would strongly encourage you to get them in touch with a local chaplain, so that the chaplains can get them started on that path. We have an excellent training system as well, from what I understand.
Yeah. Well, so the moral here, or the takeaway here is never forget about the chappie.
Absolutely. Never forget about the chappie.
Well, let's get into our next segment. Before we do, we'll have a public service announcement with Jamie Knight over here. She'll explain to folks a little bit about the United States Coast Guard Mutual Aid Association. And when we come back, we'll talk about the Coast Guard and the Coast Guard news. We're calling it the Gold and Silver News segment.
Thanks for listening, everyone. This is Jamie Knight, producer of the Ship's Log. Today, I'd like to talk to you about the USCG Mutual Aid Association. The USCG Mutual Aid Association is another one of those important resources that we often forget about. The CGMA is available to all members of the Coast Guard family, active reserve, auxiliary, and civilian employees. They have many assistance programs, and particularly for those hit with financial troubles during this COVID-19 crisis. There are some very useful programs and loans that could help one weather the financial storm. There is, of course, a process, but it is relatively easy and begins with contacting the CGMA representative, who is usually an active duty member at your nearest sector office or on their website at cgmahq.org. Also, keep in mind that this is an organization that is independent of the federal government and relies solely on donations. So if you are one of the more fortunate who have a bit to spare, this is certainly a worthy place to make a donation. This is the organization that helps our coasties during government shutdowns and ensures that they have the finances they need. So again, please keep them on your mind the next time you have a little to donate to a very worthy cause.
Welcome back to the Ship's Log. I'm JB Yowell with co-host here, Jerry Maddox. And now we're into what we call the Gold and Silver News. And so what does exactly the Coast Guard have to do with NASA and SpaceX?
Well, JB, I'm glad you asked that. This one's going to be a little bit of fun. Um,
I can see you perk up and getting excited, Jerry.
this one's kind of interesting. You know, it's a lot of fun. SpaceX, you might remember, launched Crew Dragon as a test run back in May. And they did that from, of course, Cape Canaveral, Cape Kennedy. And they launched Robert Bankin and Doug Hurley to spend, I believe, almost 2 months on the space station. Well, SpaceX is recovering every part of its rocket, which they're doing everything much closer into shore, which requires a lot of Coast Guard activity because, of course, everything that happens out at sea is going to be more the deep water Navy, but everything that happens in closer to shore is going to be the Coast Guard. So during the launch, of course, Port Canaveral, Station Port Canaveral was doing the escort and the security for the launch, which is they have to put a big security perimeter around so that boats can't get too close for various safety reasons and for security reasons. But the really cool part was during the splashdown. When they came back, they couldn't go over to the west side, over to the east side, actually. And even then, the Coast Guard would have been heavily involved, but they got to splash down in my backyard, which I thought was just overly cool, and so did my kids.
Convenient.
So Sector Mobile had to step up. They put out not only our local patrol boats, but the Coast Guard cutter Gannett off of Pensacola. The recovery was to take place about 3 miles off of Pensacola. I think it was a little bit further out. I know a lot of people were gathered on the beach hoping to get to see the splashdown, but it was a little too far out for that. But the Gannett was there on scene, and see, if we hadn't been in this lockdown for COVID, there would have been a lot more involvement. As you may have seen, actually, a lot of boats trying to get into that security perimeter because they were tracking it on SpaceX's live stream, and they were able to actually get kind of unhealthily close to that security perimeter around the capsule and splash down. Normally what would happen is Sector Mobile would put out a lot of Coast Guard auxiliary boats as well, in addition to their own patrol boats to kind of help and secure that security. Of course, with the lockdown, that didn't happen, and there was kind of a lot of short notice issues, which they performed phenomenally. Don't get me wrong; these guys were out of this world.
Sure.
But the Gannett was able to bring them back in safely. But then there's some other little tie-ins here that a lot of people don't realize. The Coast Guard Auxiliary serves on board cutters. A lot of people are unaware, but we have a food service program.
Yeah.
So the cookie on board that cutter very well could have been an auxiliarist. So if you want to get involved with some very interesting stuff, very close and up close and up front, the place to do it would be in the auxiliary food service.
Absolutely. I've even thought about that one myself. I don't know if at my position in life I can stay on a cutter real long, but I would certainly enjoy wanting to be on one and earn those accolades for sure.
Absolutely. Well, and two cutters stay out for varying lengths of time. Some are, do more inshore, so they're out just, up to a week and a half, 2 weeks. Some of them stay out for extended periods, but definitely something I would encourage people to look into. I just thought this was a very neat one because it happened in my backyard.
Sure.
I know some of the people who were able to be there. I mean, it was the first space launch from U.S. soil and, since the end of the shuttle program, so almost 20 years. I mean, this is a lot of really, really, really cool things that are happening. And, the Coast Guard is going to be at the forefront of that. Sector Mobile was relaying the radio messages between the ships. They were responsible for making the maritime warnings. All of these things that I'm mentioning are things that auxiliaries do. If an auxiliarist was manning that radio station, he would have been the one making the maritime advisories. Just a lot of really cool things. And I know we're hanging very heavy silver side on this show. That is going to change going into the future. But these were just some really exciting things that happened happened, and we wanted to tie them in and let people know what they can do.
Well, that certainly makes it exciting times for the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary.
Yes, sir, it does. Yes, sir, it does. I mean, don't get me wrong. Our everyday missions are fun. Vessel examinations, they're fun. We do a lot of cool things. Partner visitations are fun. You get to meet a lot of really cool, really interesting people. You get to be around a lot of cool, interesting people. I mean, being an instructor, I'm an instructor for, marine safety classes. All of these things that we do are over the top fun. But when you get to the fact that you can deal with a spacecraft coming back from the International Space Station, I don't think it gets much cooler than that. If you can put your stamp of approval on that one.
Well, I would love to be part of that, and I'm excited that we even have the remote chance to be part of it. So
yes, sir, absolutely.
Great. Well, that was a great segment. Let's continue to on the screen when we get back, and we'll break and let Jamie give another public service announcement, and we'll go from there.
When you join the Coast Guard Auxiliary, you could find yourself on patrol, saving lives and property, assisting in marine safety and environmental protection, radio watchstanding, educating the public in boating safety, and much more. That's what our members do. We don't just train. We train and perform. Since 1939, the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary has safeguarded our nation's maritime interests in the heartland, in the ports, at sea, and around the globe. Members from all walks of life bring their training and experience as a member of the uniformed volunteer component of the United States Coast Guard. Our main goal is recreational boating safety and education, while acting as a force multiplier in support of Coast Guard authorized missions. Today's U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary, with nearly 26,000 men and women, is a unique force that carries out an array of responsibilities, touching almost every facet of the U.S. maritime environment. The Coast Guard's motto is Semper Paratus, meaning always ready. The overarching mission of the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary is to contribute to the safety and security of our citizens, ports, waterways, and coastal regions. Please take the time to read about the history of the Auxiliary, the benefits of joining, the missions we're involved in, awards and recognition, and pride in wearing the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary uniform. Learn more today at join.cgaux.org.
Welcome back. You're watching the Ship's Log, the official podcast for the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary. I'm JB Yowell, and with me is co-host Jerry Maddox. And now it's time for legends, myths, and stories. And Jerry wanted to talk about a documentary called I Am Second, the smallest powerboat crossing off the Atlantic, which, Jerry, I haven't had a chance to watch yet. Frankly, I barely know anything about it, but you being the history buff you are and how you enjoy these types of documentaries, I'm sure you're going to give us the inside critic from Jerry Maddox.
Well, we are a seaborne organization, right? So I like to watch a lot of things about navigation, sailing, anything to do with the sea, I'm on. But Amazon Prime is running some of these older documentaries that you couldn't find anywhere before. And I ran across this one, and man, I loved it from beginning to end. I binged watched this thing twice.
I'm ready.
And it's just the story of two brothers, Ralph and Bob Brown. And they had just on a whim, a few years prior to this story, taken a flats boat that Bob had built, that Ralph had built, and they had just taken it off to Bermuda and wound up setting the longest single leg crossing in a 21-foot flats boat that had ever been done. So they decided to raise money for wounded warriors by making a crossing of the Atlantic in the same open cockpit, 21 3-inch flats boat. Now, if anybody doesn't know what a flats boat is, this is literally a flat bottom boat. It has 3 inches of water in it, no keel. Their design has kind of a split catamaran, if you can imagine, but it's not a very wide keeled boat, and they're going to take it across the North Atlantic.
Wow, word.
Man, this was worth every minute of watching. I'm actually thinking about showing it in my next about boating safely class, is what you should not do in a boat ever. But
Go across the Atlantic, you say?
no, just period. They were ill prepared. They were ill prepared, my friend. Everything we teach that you should do in a boat, they did the opposite. They had, just a very bad VHF that they didn't test. They didn't have any radar reflection. They actually bought that somewhere in Trip because somebody said it was a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Their GPS navigation, they were using a Garmin, and as soon as they crossed into Canadian waters going up the East Coast, it cut out on them. They had no navigation. So these brothers worked their way all the way up the East Coast and wound up in northern Canada in the maritime provinces, and then cut across on a 600-mile crossing to Greenland. They're off surfboarding around glaciers and doing all kind of really fun things, which makes it a great story. But they worked their way across all the way to the Shetland. They went to Iceland. They went to the Faroe Islands, to the Shetland Islands, and on to UK and up the Thames to London. Then they went back and crossed down and went across to France and up the Rhine River to Landstuhl. And of course, Landstuhl is where a lot of our wounded warriors wind up, coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq. Really, really, really a very thoughtful documentary. Most of it was shot by hand, just from GoPros, but it's really worth the watch, and it really puts to mind what some people do sacrifice for this country, and what little bit we can do to help those people. Again, I would highly encourage anybody, especially any right seaman, who enjoys watching other people's exploits. This is an absolute must see.
Fantastic. Well, that was a great review. I'm super excited to watch it. You got me stoked for sure.
Glad to hear it, my friend.
All right. So one thing we wanted to try and wrap the show up with is this show conclusion we call Shipmates. And this is where we take the time to show the love of our Coast Guard family and have honorable mentions of particular individuals. And Jerry, I know you selected someone you wanted to talk about. And who is this person, and what does this person mean to the Coast Guard Auxiliary?
Well, this person was somebody I knew personally, and he was a huge inspiration to many, many people, including our national commodore at the moment. They were quite close, and he was a mentor to many. And his name was Bob Burton. Captain Bob Burton was a lieutenant commander in the Navy during, well, actually, let me go back. He was actually during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He was a tail gunner on a B-52. And when he got out from the Air Force, he spent a couple of years bopping around and decided he didn't like civilian life very much, and he went back into the Navy and went on to retire as a lieutenant commander. Captain Burton was just one of those people who was so devoted to duty that he never could quite leave the life behind. He spent the rest of his years as an active member of the Coast Guard Auxiliary, supplementing everything that we do on the active side. If you name it, he's done it. I mean, his ribbons were I've never seen a ribbon rack like this in my life.
Goodness.
And the gentleman was an instructor, an examiner, a proctor. He was a certified coxswain. Of course, he was a vessel examiner as well. He is just one of those people that everybody he met, they wanted to be like him. He was like a walking recruitment poster, and the most kind and humble person you could ever meet in your life. So, we just wanted to give a huge shout out to him. And just as an indication, one final indication, somebody gave me word not too long ago that his graduating class at Murphy High School here in Mobile, the class of 1953, thought so highly of him that they have banded together and raised money for the Coast Guard Auxiliary, and they are making a fairly sizable donation to the Coast Guard Auxiliary directly. That's what I would say.
Well, that's
kind of a good note. So we just wanted to say, bravo Zulu, Captain Burton. on a life well lived, and for the wake that you have left through the sea of life. Thank you very much, sir.
Captain Bob Burton sure really touched a lot of lives, and that's on the silver side. Well, let's talk about someone who's touched a lot of lives on the gold side. Jerry?
We're going to go ahead and give a great big bravo Zulu to ME1 Centron aboard the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Kimball. This sharp-eyed shark watch really lived up to his name. Oh my goodness. ME1 was standing shark watch during a recent swim call in the Pacific when an 8-foot mako decided to take a run at about 40 of his shipmates while they were in the water. ME1 was able to ward off the shark by several times by firing short bursts at its head, which actually gave everyone a chance to exit the water safely. Needless to say, it was a scramble, from what I understand. But the crew of the Kimball, they ought to keep ME1 pretty close by because he looks like a really good friend to have.
No question. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching the first episode of the Ship's Log. We appreciate you sticking around and staying tuned in. I'm JB Yowell, and with me is co-host Jerry Maddox, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks for tuning in to the first episode of The Ship's Log, the official podcast of the United States Coast Guard and United States Coast Guard Auxiliary. This is Jamie Knight, your producer, and I want to encourage all of you to follow us on Facebook and YouTube. Just search for The Ship's Log, U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. Till next time, bravo Zulu, everyone.